We're going to start with this educational session. So again, my name is Aldrin Santos. I've been a Toastmaster for almost 8 years now. I started in 2012. And the reason that I started Toastmasters is I want to improve first my English speaking. I'm not a local of Canada. I'm also an immigrant. And by joining Toastmasters, I've found that I can be able to improve my English. And right now, I want to just give this 300 million. And this is my question. What do you think this 300 million stands for?
The number of virtual meetings that go on every day.
Okay. Absolutely right. Thank you, Katrina. It's the number of daily meeting participants on Zoom as of April 22, 2020. Just imagine that, how big it is. It's actually almost the same size as the total USA population. Back in 2019, December, Zoom has only 10 million daily participants. But because, like I said, because of this coronavirus, I guess it just spawned up and zoomed up to 300 million. As the coronavirus pandemic has forced millions and millions around the world to stay in their homes, virtual meetings have been the go-to of people to communicate right now. Whether it's for work, I know some of you are working right now. You might be using the asset of virtual communication to do your meetings. I myself do that in my work. Whether it's for business, you might have your own business and you might be performing some digital marketing or virtual demos. Or maybe you're gonna use it for leisure. You just want to catch up with friends, maybe around the world, or trying to call your mom over dinner and see what they're eating. Virtual meetings have been a staple means of communication right now. Actually, based on research, the Global Market Insights predicts that video conferencing, an $11 billion market in 2017, will grow up to $20 billion by 2024. Virtual meeting is ubiquitous. And with the current situation, I think it would like to stay. Since the virtual communication is now the new norm of communication, running a virtual meeting is important. And that's why I'm here to give you some tips on how to conduct a good meeting. So after this session, I would like everyone to know the advantages and disadvantages of virtual meetings. As well, we can determine the 4 steps in conducting an effective online meeting. Yes, I've come up with some simple 4 steps that you can use in order to conduct a good meeting. We're also going to tackle some strategies to engage your audience. I know that's been challenging for you, whether you run or concluded a virtual meeting, that having to engage your audience is important. I'm going to give you some strategies on that. And lastly, hopefully, if we have enough time, we want to discover tips in utilizing the features of some online meeting platforms. I'd just like to ask Sandra do you have a poll ready or no? Okay, thank you. I'm gonna give you a poll for today. Sandra will raise it up shortly. And the question is, which of the virtual meeting platforms do you often use? I'm gonna give everyone a minute to put your question. And then once it's ready, Sandra will let me know if everyone has answered the question. Did we get a result, Sandra, already? Has everyone answered the poll? Perfect. So looks like the winner is Zoom. Almost half of the group are actually using Zoom as their major means of communication. Thank you very much. And you can close thank you very much. Okay. So with that, let's talk about the need for virtual meetings. I really like this caricature. I work in a credit union, and every morning we do have a stand-up meeting. And all I can just imagine ourselves looking like that, because our manager always starts the meeting with that line, "All right, let's get started." So the question is, what is actually a virtual meeting? A virtual meeting is when people around the world, regardless of their location, use video, audio, and text to link up online. Virtual meeting allows people to share information in data in real time without physically located together. As you can see right now with this current pandemic, we might be in different areas around the city or maybe around the world. And through the virtual meetings, we're able to connect with each other. Virtual meetings use what we call a video teleconference or VTC software. So you might ask, what is VTC or video teleconferencing? Video teleconferencing is a technology that facilitates the communication and interaction of two or more users through a combination of high quality audio or video over the internet protocol networks. I know it sounds technical, so I'm just gonna say it in simple words. Video teleconferencing is the application that we use. Zoom. Can you give other things that we use? I think you're on mute, Becca.
Yeah, there's WebEx.
There you go.
WebEx.
Yes.
I,
Skype?
Skype, yes.
Microsoft Teams.
There you go. So there's a lot of VTC software around the planet right now. And like I said, I mentioned earlier, it's becoming one of the best industries that is sprouting right now. So what is a virtual meeting again? Again, maybe in my layman definition, a virtual meeting is a way for you to connect with people around the world using the internet without the need to brush your teeth or even wear your dress pants on. The need for virtual meetings, as you can see in this movie, in this clip, sorry, I cannot play the video, but in this photo, the Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, you can see that the Emperor, by the name of Darth Sidious, who is light years away from his pupil Darth Vader, is communicating through a hologram image on him. In this meeting, it's actually a virtual meeting. Darth Sidious is instructing him to capture Luke Skywalker, which is at the moment, he doesn't know that it's his son. So just imagine this, right? You're already having a virtual meeting even 40 years ago when this movie was shown. I would say that virtual meeting is a way that can bring people together in cyberspace or even outer space to collaborate, share ideas, all online. So just when there's always a dark side and a light side in terms of things, even virtual meetings has its pros and cons. You can see in this table the different pros and cons of virtual meetings. And hopefully we can just spend a minute or two to discuss that. And I would encourage everyone's participation on this meeting. Let's just work on the first line, the pros and cons, flexibility and easy to get distracted or get distracted. Can you give me an example how come virtual meeting can be so flexible? Feel free to raise your hand or just start to speak up. Go ahead, Tekla.
it's flexible because I don't have to travel anywhere. So I save time by, I can get there really fast and I can take one meeting after another. If I wasn't virtual, if I wanted to go from meeting a pace communication to Charleswood, I would never make both meetings. So this is why I take the flexibility.
Okay. And what do you think, how can you get, what's a con in terms of being easily distracted?
With flexibility?
Flexibility.
With the cons.
Yeah.
What I find is sitting too much. If I had to go from one meeting to the other and I had to travel and I had to walk, I had to go to my car, and I find sitting in one place for a very long time doesn't help me, and I don't like sitting too much, so then I get distracted.
There you go. And Katrina, thank you, Tekla, for those. Do you have anything to say also and to add anywhere in this pros? Yeah.
Well, I just find that really you can get distracted so easily by something happening in your home or something else that pops up on your screen, sometimes a reminder of something or an email coming in or whatever. So you really have to focus your energies on staying in touch with the meeting.
That's right. There's a lot of distractions, especially at home. Sandra.
Location. You're able
Okay.
to, one of the pros is you're able to meet a wider margin of people that you wouldn't necessarily be able to reach if you were in a brick and mortar situation. So virtually, you pretty much have the world as your oyster.
That's right. Basically, that's it. The world is your oyster. I like that.
Mhm.
How about time and money saving? What can you tell about that? Anyone in the group? How come virtual meeting can be a good time and money saver? Okay, Katrina.
Well, I wouldn't say money saving, because if you want to have a meeting that's longer than 45 minutes, you have to actually pay for it in Toastmasters. So Toastmasters are already paying their dues. But I guess it certainly could be money saving for companies, because they wouldn't necessarily have to in the long run. They may be able to reduce the size of their brick and mortar buildings and use the rest of the building for something else. But then you also need to have them looking at, I think the con of that would be, you would have to probably start outfitting their home offices properly with good chairs and so on. I saw an article in the news last night that was about the fact that people are starting to have all kinds of problems with their body because the chairs that they have at home are not properly conformed to sitting and working all day. And so they're starting to get those kinds of things happening.
I agree. Yeah, thank you. I think Carl has something to say, and then I'll get to Lloyd after.
Okay, so in terms of time, so it talks about flexibility. So it connects to flexibility because that's any time, or either midnight or mornings or afternoons. But the cons is easy to get distracted because sometimes on the time you usually is getting late, or sometimes the connection will be down, so it's kind of a lag of on and off. And then sometimes if we have the children, so it's gonna be too loud, and there's during the times that it's gonna be distracted to us while we're doing a meeting, virtual meeting for that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Carl. And Lloyd, you want to add something too?
Well, Katrina's point about the chairs, I actually bought a new chair this week, so I covered that one off. But the time and money saving I saw as the pros there, I've probably been to 5 times as many clubs as I usually go to, and I've spent $0 on gasoline, whereas to go cover that many clubs, I probably would have spent $300 on gasoline.
Yeah.
Okay. So you save some money, but at the same time, you spend some money by buying a new chair. So I guess it just offsets it.
Well, my cat needed somewhere to sleep, so it's an investment in my pets.
That's good. Okay, so I guess I like your ideas. For ease of collaboration, I just want to add here that, as you know, with having to being flexible and being to save time, the collaboration has been so seamless because that with the virtual meeting, there's a lot of features that you can use to collaborate, such as file sharing or even annotating your virtual screenshots or virtual presentations. So that's so good. But the less personal interactions, I want to get your opinion. Maybe someone who's not had said something else. What can you say about the cons of virtual meetings having less personal interaction?
For me, is it talks about environment because we're still in the house, and if we were working like in on site, so we're personal interactions, social interactions. So we're doing talking, or we're just like talking to each other, like verbally. If right now it's kind of doing at home, so it's not like is every distances are we're going somewhere. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's why it's less personal interactions looks like.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Carl. Yeah, I do agree that it has become less more personal, I would say. Okay, Lloyd, you want to say something as well?
Well, on that personal interaction part, and you maybe captured it with the less personal, but we're on I think our 8th meeting at our own club using this technology. And I gave a speech last week and I said, I have still not settled into a comfortable zone for doing the speeches because I don't get the feedback from the audience, that immediate feedback. And I like to get the immediate feedback so I can see how my speech is going. It actually gives me some energy to make a fantastic ending or make a good impression. But on these ones, it seems more stale or something because at the end, I usually get these evaluations, well, to make more of an impact you could have, it just doesn't seem the same. And I still haven't settled into that yet.
Yeah, that's great to know. And I do appreciate your comments and everything. So more room for attendees, people around the world can attend. Security concerns, Zoom bombing. So has anyone heard about Zoom bombing? If you want to just raise your hand. And if not, I'm just gonna quickly explain. Yeah. So great, Zoom bombing is where people who is not invited to the meeting can just easily enter. But I think that it's been fixed a bit by Zoom by providing more security by having passwords. So I think the security concerns can be a bit tricky. It depends on how the user is using it. Okay, so because virtual meetings has its pros and cons, if ever that virtual meetings you'd think doesn't work for you, but I guess for a lot of people it does, there is a alternatives that you can use. So you can do some phone conferencing, like teleconferencing, just using your phone. Me, Carl, and our club coach, Debbie, has actually done that yesterday. In order to plan our DCP goals, we just went on the phone and talked for like an hour. Group messaging, you can do that through text, or even if you have Facebook Messenger. One of you might have already some groups that you have used, so this is a good, it's still virtual, but at the same time, it's not mostly like video. Group emailing, I know that we do that a lot. And if you want to make it the traditional way, having to read and smell the touch of paper, you can just use snail mail. So with that, I would like to go on some tips, or how do we really conduct a virtually effective meeting? I'd like to share 4 steps that I've come up, which I hope that you can easily remember. Now, before I show up my steps, please note that I'm not here to promote my Toastmasters Club, PACE Champions, but just coincidentally, I actually come up with the term, the PACE method. So in order to conduct a nice productive meeting, just follow having a good pace. So what does PACE mean? You need to plan. After planning, administer the meeting. And once you administer the meeting, go on and have a good conclusion. And it's not ending yet, because after that, you need to have some evaluation. So in the next maybe 20 minutes or so, I would go over the different steps for you. Let's work on the first one, which is plan. Preparation is the key to launch an effective online meeting. There's actually a quote that we always hear about planning. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. This holds true every time. That extra hour or so that you use in order to prepare an online meeting can save you lots in terms of making it very effective. So some of the questions that we need to ask in preparing for an online meeting is, first, what is the purpose of the meeting? We can't run a meeting without a clear objective of what we want. Having a purpose on your meeting can be a foundational guide. So meeting can actually be classified into 3 different purposes. First one is information giving. If you're in a meeting, let's say that you want to give a report to the rest of the group, just like what I'm doing today, this is a good, you need to know that if this is your meeting, you need to know that this is your purpose. Next is information taking. If your meeting is more about just trying to get some information, so if you're facilitating a meeting and you want to do some brainstorming with your folks or trying to get their ideas on how you can be able to address a certain situation, that is one of the good things in terms of information taking. And lastly is problem solving. It's also a good example where you want to address a specific problem with your team and be able to conduct a meeting for that. A good example that we have is our club, PACE Champions, is actually wanting to achieve its distinguished status by the end of the year. And we held a meeting in order to address some questions. So it's mostly like information giving, information taking, and we managed to solve the problem and came up with steps. The next is, who is my target audience? Your approach to running a meeting depends on the type of audience that are attending it. So for example, if you're holding a meeting to tell your staff about a policy change, we'll have a different approach when you're actually reporting a progress report to your board of directors. So in terms of that, you need to consider some different factors in order to hold and know your target audience. First is the size. The size of your audience influences your presentation style. Speaking to a small group allows you for more participation, just like what we're doing right now. But speaking to a larger group gets less interaction, but at the same time, you manage to address a bigger part of the audience. Demographics. You need to find out the gender, cultural or educational background of your audience and tailor your message according to it. So for example, a good example is if you're talking to, let's say, a group of immigrants, I would say that we need to maybe trim down on using a bit of more, I would say, complicated English where I can get my nosebleed in order to address that audience. Or if your demographic is more like a younger generation, you might tend to use jargons that they can use, like LOL or all those abbreviations. I'm not part of that generation, I would say, but at the same time, you need to know their demographics on that. Prior knowledge. Your audience prior knowledge is important in order to provide a good meeting. To provide the most value to your audience, you want to provide information that they do not have yet. So for example, you can use this thing if you want to give a certain topic. So let's say that Sandra wants to provide a webinar in order to help individuals to have a good night's sleep despite of this pandemic. So you need to find the knowledge that your participants know in terms of health. And lastly, I call the WIFFM. Does anyone know what WIFFM means? But actually, I misspelled it. It should be WIIFM. I think, Lord, you're speaking.
Yeah, what's in it for me?
Perfect. So sorry, I misspelled it. But what's in it for me? You need to always answer the question, what is it for me? If you're the audience, if you place yourself in the shoes of your audience, what do you think can benefit them with this? What can I get out of the meeting? And so forth. The next is, where should I hold the meeting? Let's answer the when first. So there is a duration and time. So when you're holding a meeting, make sure that it's not gonna last with an hour. So if you're talking about one topic, you don't want to have the meeting go longer than 2 hours. Or at the same time, if you're wanting to address a problem, don't shorten it for like 20 minutes. The time. What's the best time for you to hold the meeting? It depends on your audience. That's why number 2 is important, where know your audience, because if the timing doesn't work for them, it will be quite impossible to get the enough audience that you want. And lastly is where. Of course, you're gonna do it at your home or your office, but what I mean by where is what kind of meeting platform should you use in order to hold an online meeting? So there's different features dependent on the needs in order to provide it. So I'm gonna give you a good comparison of the first 3. I think that's in terms of our poll today, this is the top 3 applications that people use in terms of holding a meeting: Zoom, Google Hangouts, and Microsoft Teams. So there's a different varieties and features of the meeting. So you need to know what works best for you. So for example, if everyone can see this, I'm not sure if it's large enough. In terms of Microsoft Teams, there's no waiting room for participants to join early. Or if you want to have more people on the group, you can actually go on Zoom, because you can actually put up to 500 people on that. Or if you want to have a collaboration, if you want to collaborate with some apps, I think the best avenue that you can use is Google Hangouts, because it's integrated with the various Google applications, and you can collaborate online with that. I want to share something with Teams that I like, even though I like Zoom better, is with Teams, before you start a meeting, you do have an option to see yourself first in the video, even before you join in. So if you log in on Teams, I'm not sure if everyone has tried that, you would see yourself on a screen, and then you can project your screen if you like your screen, and you can have an option to turn on, turn off. Unlike Zoom, once you're in, the video turns on. But I'm gonna give you some technique later on how to do that, how to prevent that from happening. The last one in terms of planning is developing an agenda. Having an agenda for the meeting is like having a map in order to find your treasure in a treasure hunt. An agenda helps attendees follow the meeting flow and be able to be at the same page with you, thereby keeping them focused and help you reach your purpose. Some of the things that I can recommend is, in terms of developing agenda, is learning what are the tasks involved in the meeting. You want to know who are doing the tasks, who are the owners, and what's the limits in order for you to not go over time. And also you need to send the meeting beforehand. Having your audience to prepare and read through your agenda can help them prepare and be able to be more present when you hold your online meeting. By doing this, you can eliminate a lot of thinking in the meeting, and you can use that time in order to share more ideas and try to come up with solutions. The next thing I would say is, the next step is administer. In order to hold a virtual meeting, you need to actually know first what kind of checklist. Prepare a checklist. One of the things, can you tell me if you have hold an online meeting, what are the things that need to actually, what are some of the items you need to put on your checklist? So a good example is making sure that your connection is good. Can anyone share some of the things that you find it's important before you start a meeting? Yes, Lloyd?
Yes, make sure if you're needing to have a glass of water, get it before the meeting starts if you're the presenter.
I
You
agree.
don't want to leave the room in the middle of your meeting.
Have anyone seen that kind of thing where people have left the meetings and then start grabbing a glass of water? It's kind of distracting, right? Okay. Anything else? Carl?
Yeah. So make sure you have to be ready. So go to the washroom quickly. So eat lunch or dinner. So make sure it's before the meeting starts. We should like be ready, everything, and eat like everything is ready. Even clothes as well. So
yes,
sometimes it's like I saw from based on what I watched from YouTube or in the news that they're wearing like on the top and the bottom is kind of weird stuff now, or we're wearing pajamas still. So yeah,
it's
so
important
make sure
that you
you
do
have to
that.
be ready everything before the meeting starts, or the video is gonna be turned on. Like be ready on that.
That's right. Okay, any two more? I think two more can help. What kind of things that you prepare for the meeting? Yes, Tekla?
Yeah, make sure. Sometimes I find if I'm evaluating, I forget to have my piece of paper and my pen, especially my pen, and I want to take down notes. So have all the tools that you need for your online meeting handy and very close. And if you're using a microphone or a headphone, have all those ready to go.
That's right. Yeah, you want to have the paper ready. I do that all the time. And Katrina, you say you want to say something?
Well, I was thinking too that it's really important to keep your meeting link ready, because often people will ask if you can send a link.
I like that.
Text or something else. So it's hard because sometimes they need both the password and meeting ID, and it seems that I get caught on that quite often.
Yeah, a good example is we were in a Toastmasters meeting last Thursday, and at 5:30 when we started, somebody emailed me and looking for the meeting link. So good thing that Carl has it handy, and he managed to get that person send the meeting link right away. She managed to join in at least 5 minutes late, but you know what happened in the end? She actually joined as a member. So if our meeting link was not available at that time and Carl hasn't prepared that, we might have just lost one potential member. So I like that. And Sandra, you want to add something on that?
I just want to say you want to make sure that your environment, the way that you appear on camera, your lighting, and all of that is conducive to a good presentation.
That's right. Especially when you're speaking, and let's say you are in the middle of a construction area, you don't want to hear people hitting those drills and those lumberjacks to, I think it's not lumberjack, but you know what I mean on that. Okay, so that's great ideas for everyone in order to prepare a checklist, and I think that we can do that. The next thing is logging in early. There's an importance of being an early bird in terms of a meeting. Like they say, the early bird gets the worm, right? But at the same time, there are two advantages by logging early. One is doing a tech check. So for example, if you log in early, you can be able to know whether your presentation will work or not. So for example, a good thing is, let's say that your host hasn't enabled the screen sharing yet. So you might be able to do that and enable that before the meeting starts. And next thing is, this is the most important, you will be able to connect with your attendees. By logging in early, you can already establish connection and build rapport with them by involving one small talk. And one of the things that I could recommend with that is being able to talk to them and greet them as they come, just like as we do in our regular meeting. And it helps by getting them acknowledged. And at the same time, if they respond, they would know if their mic is working. And lastly is dressing for success. I think I cannot anymore argue that even though you're at home, you need to actually still look professional in your meeting. You don't want to be in your PJs or dressing up just like you get up out in bed, because first impression lasts. So by doing that and dressing for success, you can actually, even though you're at home, you can be comfortable, but at the same time, look professional. So a recent study shows that people who actually dress better gain more confidence, feel more powerful, and likely to be viewed as people as someone with influence. Does everyone agree on that? Yes. And also, I've proven that myself. By dressing up for success or dressing up before your meeting, you'll be able to feel that you're more confident because people acknowledge you and you have a good feel of yourself. Something that I would share about dressing for success is this is a good example. This is Will Reeve. He's actually a reporter of the GMA network. And if you just don't know, Will Reeve is actually the son of Christopher Reeve, who, is one of the most famous actors in terms of the Superman role. So this is a good example when you're doing a report, right? Or maybe a presentation is just for success. But there's a bit of catch in that, because what happens is when he was reporting and there was like there's like this blue caption there, when the caption was gone, he actually ended up forgetting to put his pants on. So part of the things with dressing success is make sure that you angle your camera perfectly so they cannot see the bottom of your pants. Another thing that you can do for holding a meeting is let everyone know of the house rules. So this is something that I would share about house rules. Is video conferencing is limited to some restrictions. So you need to know whenever you start a meeting, let everyone know first what's happening around. So at least you would be able to achieve your goals. So first is letting everyone, if they need to mute or unmute their audio. I can share a little bit of rule on that. It's called the rule of 5. If you're wanting to have a group and you want to know if they need to unmute or mute it, always consider that if the group is 5 people or less, encourage them to actually have their mic on in order to create collaboration. Or like I said, right, if you want to tell a joke, you can hear people laughing and that creates a good sense of enjoyment. But if the group is more than 5, you can advise everyone to just mute their mics, and then when they started speaking, make sure that you mute them. A few exemptions in terms of the rule of 5 is, for example, if your dog is barking, or maybe your mom is already telling you to go and eat lunch together, make sure that you are on mute. Next is video on and off. As we talk about above, right, we need to make sure that there are also non-verbal cues that we need to make. So by having the video on, you'll be able to present a good impression for your audience. I know that if you're just listening, you need to still encourage everyone to turn their video on, because that's just how we meet, right? We need to see each other's faces. And also for them, you can tell that by having your video on, you can see yourself registering on your screen, and at the same time, having to become more comfortable on seeing yourself on video. But another exemption for that is if your connection is a bit unstable, you can be able to just let everyone know that your video is unstable and you will just keep your video on off. Also tell them about the chat feature. If they want to say something and they cannot say it during the meeting, you may be able to let them know that we have a chat feature available, and if they want to speak something, they can just raise their hands. And lastly, you can let them know that there are helpers. So if there's a timer or a poll moderator, you can let them know. So let's say that they need to chat them and not distract the speaker, they may be able to get them to chat with them. Next is handling unexpected issues. In a meeting, sometimes unexpected issues happen. For example, background noise. told about that. So the solution is make sure that you turn on your audio to mute or mute. It depends on the background noise. Next is connectivity failures. I know that there's a lot of people who have some internet connection problems. And if that happens, make sure that you give them an option if they can call in via phone in order to prevent that from happening. Next is audio or video loss. And another issue that I can share with you in audio video loss is we're in a meeting last Thursday, and you know how we clap in Toastmasters, that we do like that? So what happened is one of our members, and we were clapping, her video stopped working, and 5 minutes after, we were already speaking, and we were just chatting, and I was doing Toastmasters. Her hand was still there. So we were just wondering, how come she's not getting tired of raising her hands? And then all of a sudden, her video just turned off. So as a Toastmasters, what I did is, because I noticed that, as a moderator, make sure that you have the option to turn off your participant's video, just to not have the distraction of the meeting. And lastly, sometimes it happens, and happens all the time, that when you're in a meeting, you might tend to lose your audience engagement. And in terms of that, has anyone wants to share something about losing audience engagement? I guess yes. So I'm going to give you some tips in order to how to get your audience become connected again. With virtual meetings, the challenge usual to keep participants focused and engaged during a meeting. So I would recommend that it's easier to connect with the people on a virtual meeting by following some simple steps. So meetings in a virtual meeting seems less personal without the lack of personal interaction. So it's important that what you need to do is humanize the connection by doing these following things. First is the early bird chat. So I mentioned that before. Connect with the people that's come early in the meeting. And you can engage in small talks. I call it 3 Ws. Talk about the weather, the weekend, and the world. Especially with this pandemic, I think having to establish a connection about talking that can help. Another thing that you can do is ask some questions. So while you're connecting with your audience, let's say that, hey, Sandra, so I think that she's telling me that her weekend was good. Okay, what do you like more about the weekend? Or if Lloyd has talked about the pandemic, so what do you think? What is your opinion on that? As long as you have time before the meeting starts, develop that connection already, because I would say that will be a huge help for you when you move on to your audience. And then lastly is active listening. Who knows about active listening? Can anyone share about that? What does active listening mean? Go ahead, Sandra.
It's listening with your entire being, not hearing because we can't help but hear because we have ears. But you're listening to content, you're listening to intent, you're looking at the nonverbal communication, whether it's vocal or visual. You're monitoring that as well, and that way you're able to internalize the message that you're hearing, rather than just hearing it on a planar level.
Mm-hmm. And do you do agree that by having to involve some active listening can help you connect with your audience better?
Definitely.
That's right. So those are the three things that we can do, but there's a lot of things too. This is just something that I would do. Another good way to engage your audience is to grab them right on the get-go. By creating an attention opener, you can immediately hook your audience and have them to listen throughout your speech. Here are some ways that you can do to have a good opening. First is ask a question. If your meeting is about talking about Disney movies, how about you start with the question, do you want to build a snowman? Or if you want to also raise some fact or statistics, just like what I did today. I raised a fact to you, 300 million. Do you agree that did I hook you with that question? And try to wonder, what does it mean? You can also tell a story or talk to their heart, like I said, by telling a story. You might be able to involve a story that's related to the pandemic, or if you're talking about the pandemic, or tell a story about how you are not able to have a good night's sleep. And then you can address that problem on giving tips on how to do a good night's sleep. And lastly, you can do a mini skit. What do I mean by that? Do something surprising. Do something that people will actually just be thrilled or shocked that you're doing it. A good example that I did, but not in virtual though, is a mini skit is when I joined the district contest in terms of the international speech contest, I started by saying, I played a song and then I started singing, "You're a shining star No matter who you are, shine bright to see what could truly be. So I started with that and then raised my topics about shining star. Just so you know, you have 60 seconds to captivate your audience. Make it worthwhile. Have you attended an online meeting wherein the person that you're just talking in a webcam all the time, that they're not giving any visual cues or visual aids? How do you find that? They find boring, that's right. Since you're at a video screen, you want to use the power of visuals the best way possible. Visuals add variety to your presentation rather than bore them to death. And what I mean by that is creating some visuals, just like having some photographs on your videos or videos, or providing some charts if you want to provide some good statistics. The next thing is, in order to get your audience involved, is interact. And I'm not talking about the e-transfer feature that we get here, although it's really being widely used. But what I tell about interact is being able to connect with them and be able to throw back, just like it's like a two-way communication with your audience. Something that you can do with interacting with your audience is having a question and answer. Try to ask questions on them and let them answer. Give them a time to think. Or use the polling feature of Zoom if you're using Zoom and be able to get their answers in related to your topic. And lastly is doing some breakout sessions. If you want to create discussion in order and without the need for you to facilitate the whole meeting, go and use the breakout sessions of your feature and let us maybe assign a leader on that and then report back to them after. And lastly is delivery. Being Toastmasters, I think you can never argue that delivery is important in order to provide some engagement with your audience. So your body language is important. I know that half of your body is not being used already with delivery, but you want to still use your hands at the best way possible to prove your points. Also is facial expressions. This is the time where facial expressions can be a good way to provide a good delivery. So for example, if you are presenting and you are like that, yes, that's a good facial impression, but I think it's just not good angle. Make sure that you connect with your audience what you like by practicing some facial expression. And lastly is vocal variety. It's important that people could know if you're stressing a point by raising it up or trying to just minimize the situation by being so calm. So having to provide some delivery aspects of your meeting is important. And I would not delve further in that because as Toastmasters, I think you're all good with delivery already. So let's go again with the different steps. In order to provide a good participant engagement, you need to connect. You have a good opening. Provide some good visuals. Interact with your audience, make it interactive. And lastly, know what kind of delivery strategies you would use. So I call it the COVID way in order to make your audience being engaged on make it viral, I would say. Okay, so to conclude, the next step after planning, administering, and your meeting, you need to make sure that you conclude your meeting by addressing some questions that are lingering in the meeting. You also need to review your agenda, making sure that the questions in your agenda has been addressed, and summarize the points. And lastly, you want to encourage water cooler chats. What do I mean by water cooler chats? Water cooler chat is often referred as a casual discussion that happens after a meeting. Just imagine that when we go to a meeting, after the meeting, we tend to meet with different people, like breaking out with different people and talking about some stuff that's sometimes related to the meeting or sometimes not, in front of a water cooler or even a coffee maker. So that's what we want. So we can do this by, before the meeting ends, you can tell everyone that, hey everyone, I'm not ending the meeting yet. Feel free to discuss amongst yourselves or feel free to chat with people. And so for you to be able to provide a good ambience that after the meeting, it's ending already. You can also use the breakout session feature where you can tell everyone, so as we conclude the meeting, if you want to actually meet with someone in private, let me know as the moderator, and I can put you in a breakout session, and that can help you be able to get your meeting more intact. By doing that also, you can be able to get some feedback with your audience and having that free discussion with your water cooler chats. And lastly is evaluate. So you need to make sure that as a Toastmaster, we need the imminent value of feedback. We know that having a feedback whenever we do our speech is important. And same thing when we do our meeting. Ask a roundtable feedback to the audience. If you have time, what did they think about the meeting? Or if you don't have enough time, maybe ask them, hey, can I send you an evaluation form in terms of our meeting? I can do that by giving you an electronic copy or having an online survey to get yourself more indicated, right? So with that, I would like to just go down and say that there's 4 steps that you can do in order to provide a good meeting is planning, administering, concluding, and evaluating. And I would like to say that with these steps and trying to engage your participants, you'll be able to have a good meeting. Before we end our session, I'm just gonna share you some tips on using Zoom. Since that we have found out that the winner for the best online feature that we're using is Zoom, how about I give you some tips that you can use? Feel free to write it down, but if you don't have time, I can share you this presentation or some of the tips in terms of that. So first is the keyboard shortcut. Sometimes we want to make sure that the mute is on and off, but sometimes you don't know how to hover your mouse and you cannot find it, right? So by having to use this keyboard option, Alt-M for Windows or Command-Control for Mac, you'll be able to mute and unmute your audio. And in terms of video, you can also do that by toggling with Alt-V for Windows or Command-Shift for Mac. So it's easy for you to turn on your video on and off. So I think that having to have this option really helps. And when you're screen sharing, you can just press this option if you want to stop something and you want to go back again, because sometimes that happens, right? Another thing that we can do is video settings. So has anyone here has used an Android phone? Or if not, do you know that you can make yourself more pleasing and your skin much smoother when you're using Zoom? There's an option called the touch-up appearance. So by clicking this option, it actually smoothens some of your facial features and you might look 10 years younger. So I guess there's no more reason for you not to go on Zoom if you want to look younger on your meetings. Especially if you're talking about beauty secrets, right, Tekla? Next is the virtual background. I guess a lot of people know this already, but you can make yourself available maybe in San Francisco, or even you're on a beach, or you are somewhere across the globe. In order to do that, I think that some of our members here know already. I can share you that later. And lastly is no video when sharing. I know that sometimes that when you go on a meeting, you will just immediately shock that it's already working, right? You're already on. I find that clicking this option to have no video when joining helps you to actually compose yourself before starting a meeting. It's like going on a meeting and before you open the door, you have yourself prepared before you see the actual audience. So I would recommend that you need to actually turn off your video first and have it set up as off. And as you join your meeting, you have the option to click it. So you can compose yourself and not just becoming so surprised, right? That, okay, I already on video. Just think of it as like a door. So here's our example for turning on your touch-up appearance. If you go to settings, video settings at the left side, you would see that checkbox about touch up your appearance. So what happens is when you click that, you become 10 years younger. Virtual background is same thing. You go to your settings, go to the virtual background here on the left side, and then you can choose your different backgrounds available on the system, or you can actually add the image or a video, and then you can have that working. And lastly, for the video no joining, it's still on the video screen, just right below the touch of my appearance. you can click this option, turn off your video when joining a meeting. So whenever you join a meeting, you have the option to turn your video on. Another tip that I can share is screen sharing. Who has tried screen sharing before? Raise your hand. Do you know that there are 3 things that you can do in screen sharing? You can actually screen share either your desktop, so meaning that if you want to actually do a demo about using Zoom or do a demo on using a computer feature, this is the best option for you, is to choose your desktop screen. Or if you want to just present a PowerPoint presentation, at the same time trying to look at your notes, you can actually just do a window screen and have a certain application on that your viewers can see. And did you know that you can actually share your cell phone screen too? If you have an iPhone or an iPad and your iPad or iPhone is on the same Wi-Fi network as your Zoom account, you can actually share your screen and the cell phone. And lastly is Spotlight. Do you know what this feature is Spotlight? If not, okay. Another cool feature is Zoom is what we call the Spotlight feature. So what happens here is you can actually annotate a meeting. If you go to annotate a meeting and you can choose Spotlight. I'm not sure if you're seeing my screen here. And you see this magic one button. Okay, what do you see that red screen happening now? So if you click annotate during screen share and Spotlight, you can actually guide your users on where you're going. So it really helps when you're trying to pick up say something, or you can actually change it to like an arrow and be able to let people know about the different ways to, let's say, if you click that, you would see that it's being arrowed, right? So that's something that I would like to share. Let me just go back to my presentation again. And you can just turn it off again if you're done annotating. Okay, so this is the example of the different features that you can use for screen sharing. Do you see that? Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna do that here. And then this is like what I said about the Spotlight feature. Okay, in summary, let's look on the different agendas that we had. Okay, have we differentiated the advantages and disadvantages of our virtual meetings? You can just nod your head if you agree. Have we determined the 4 steps in conducting an effective online meeting? Have we derived some strategies to engage your audience? So what method is that again? We call it the COVID method, so make sure you make it viral. And lastly, have we discovered some tips in utilizing features of some online meeting platforms? Great. After learning everything here in terms of our virtual meeting educational session, and I'd like to get everyone's opinion here. What do you think is the best feature that you can use in any virtual meeting?
Well, I think
Yes,
the visual connection.
Okay.
The reaction, I love the reaction buttons, but that's just
Reaction.
me. I'm a kid. I never grew up.
Okay. How about you, Katrina? Or Carl? Whoever.
What I like is the background.
Oh, the visual background. Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah. And Katrina?
Well, yeah, I think the backgrounds sometimes interfere with they distract me if I've got backgrounds, everyone having backgrounds. And also sometimes there's a lot of ghosting that happens with the background, so I don't really like it.
Yeah.
So, I think the best part of it is that you can actually still meet in person with visuals.
Yes.
Yeah. So these are great things, but these are great things. And I want to say that the best feature that I would say that is available for every online meeting is actually yourself.
Oh.
Because without you and effectively managing your meeting, none of these cool features that you mentioned would ever happen. That ends my educational session. I would just like, again, to thank everyone for participating in my educational session.